Hello and welcome to Sustainably Wed's Head Table series, where we do a deep dive into conversations with experts outside of the wedding industry to bring back into the industry and see what we can learn. So today we're going to be talking about green wedding businesses. Businesses around the world are starting to, some more than others, make big and small changes in their day-to-day operations to reduce waste, minimize their footprint, and make a positive impact within their community. And while this change is happening pretty quickly in some industries, the wedding industry has been pretty slow to adopt those changes. And it's actually a $5 billion industry in Canada, so we're a big one. So in this episode, we're going to talk about what kinds of changes businesses, especially small and mid-sized ones, can make, why making change is important, and what impact even really tiny home-based businesses can make. Before we dive into that, though, I want to acknowledge that we're on the traditional and unceded territory of the Lekwungen people, the Tsonkees and Esquimalt First Nations, whose historical relationship with the land continues to this day. I also want to say that we're super happy to be here at the Parkside Hotel, and I'm going to read this because they have so many certifications that I cannot keep it straight. They are Climate Positive Biosphere Certified Hotel, who are members of the Beyond Green Network, are Green Key Certified, and are part of BC Green Business. And that last bit is my perfect segue into my expert guest today, Jarret. Jarret works for Synergy Foundation as a program manager for BC Green Business. And that program certifies member businesses based on their actions in reducing single-use plastics, water consumption, energy use, waste, carbon emissions, everything. He has a BA in Economics and Environmental Studies from UVic. And I stole this from his LinkedIn, but I really liked it. He doesn't know this part. But he says he's passionate about finding the sweet spot between environmental sustainability and economic efficiency, which is just the perfect topic for what we're going to be talking about today. So good writing on your LinkedIn profile.
Thank you very much.
I also have with me today Natasha, who's an owner and lead planner at Clearwater Events, which is a full-service, eco-friendly event planning company based in Vancouver. If you've watched any of our other episodes, you might recognize her face, as well as from last season. She's also a co-founder of The Good Green, which is an online community and resource hub that helps businesses, particularly in the event industry, with resources and training to help create better events. Thank you both for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Let's dive into our topic on green wedding businesses. Intro. I did it. So before we talk about wedding vendors and businesses, I want to talk about green businesses more generally, starting with the newly named BC Green Business, which is formerly the Vancouver Island Green Business Collective, which we happen to be a part of, and the Parkside, where we're at as well, also is as well. So I wonder, Jarret, if you can start off by telling us what is BC Green Business and what do you do?
Yeah, so BC Green Business, I guess, if we're talking about the businesses, it's a collection of businesses that are working to enhance their sustainability initiatives. And then the team, we essentially work one-on-one with these businesses to find ways that we can reduce their environmental impact and then also increase their social impact. Ultimately, I guess in the end, we end up certifying the businesses based on how many actions they complete. And that's more or less BC Green Business.
Awesome. Is it mostly kind of smaller, mid-sized businesses or larger businesses or kind of a mix?
It's a mix, but I would say mostly small to medium-sized businesses. That was our kind of target demographic when the program was started. We kind of noticed a gap there, and that they were largely underserved. The small to medium-sized businesses, like a larger business, they can hire their own sustainability team. They can kind of take care of that for them. Whereas maybe your average, say, a restaurant owner, they want to do better, but they don't maybe have the same resources that the larger company might. So that's where we come in.
Totally. And I know, for our business specifically, that was a real barrier to getting started. We were doing a lot of things sustainably in our business already, but in terms of getting a certification or any sort of outside help, that barrier of like, it's going to be a minimum of several $1,000s before we're even getting into things was a lot. It's just the two of us in our house.
Totally.
And so having something like that that's more accessible is
I think that's definitely a motivator for a lot of businesses, that they actually might not even know how sustainably they're performing. And then, the idea of getting a certification could maybe be overwhelming. But we kind of try to keep it approachable, keep it accessible.
Awesome. So when you first connect with a business and do, an assessment or a walkthrough of their business, what are some of the common things that you see as like low-hanging fruit? Things when you walk in that are just easy changes that people can do that they might not be thinking of?
Yeah, great question. Honestly, I feel like you can walk into almost any business, and if they were to focus right off the bat on waste reduction and then waste diversion, that can do them a ton for their business's footprint, but also for the bottom line. It's pretty expensive to handle waste, so just starting there, like finding the single-use items that are being used in your day-to-day operations, and then maybe just thinking that there's reusable options. Adding compost to your, it might seem obvious to some, but it's not always implemented in every business. But adding compost, diverting the organic waste from landfill is going to drastically reduce most businesses' carbon footprint.
Awesome. I love the idea, too, that I think a lot of people think about making sustainable choices or doing a certification like this as being expensive. But oftentimes, maybe you can speak more to this, are there some cost-saving situations, too, if people are wasting money and resources on things that they could be cutting back?
Totally, realizing the inherent efficiencies and sustainability is definitely a key to what we try to do with businesses. The costs can be overwhelming in a lot of ways, but they can be offset by certain projects. If just something as simple as insulating your hot water pipes, that's right there. It costs about $4 or $5. It's going to save you more than that every year. That's a small example, but there's definitely a lot of cost savings that can be found in sustainable practices.
Awesome. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So Natasha, let's get a bit into the wedding industry more specifically. From your experience, both as a wedding planner, but also as the co-founder of The Good Green, what are some of the things you see in wedding businesses or event businesses specifically that you think could be kind of low-hanging fruit that people could do to get started?
I think the easy thing, especially now coming out of COVID, is if you're not already, be a digital-first business. So use a CRM system, do all your contracts digitally. Please don't send over paper contracts and snail mail them back. I hope that we're past those days. And then if you are doing meetings, try doing online meetings first. And then if you do need to do on-site, think about the way that you're commuting to those locations, whether that's by car, carpool, whatever mechanism that is. So those are the two easy ones, I would say, that give you the biggest bang for your buck.
Awesome. I love, too, there that it's also less expensive. Not having to print things off and send them in the mail, but also not having to meet people for coffee all the time, having some of those meetings virtually. We found when COVID hit, our business had like a huge reduction in our coffee and like entertainment budget for clients. And we made that up in other ways that we could bring extra value to them and connect with them online. But yeah, it's bonus, double there. Double, that was a good coffee reference. Oh, dear.
You have really bad humor today.
Yeah, we're just going to blow right past that and keep asking questions. So my next question is for both of you. And I'm wondering, what do you think is often stopping small businesses particularly from making changes in their business to be more sustainable? Is it a lack of resources, information, time, support, a little bit of everything? Maybe we'll start with Jarret.
Yeah, honestly, I think you kind of nailed three. It's a mix of the three. If you're a business owner, you're going to be busy as it is. Certain practices aren't implemented from day one, it can maybe be a little bit daunting to make even small changes to your operations once you found what works. So I think also maybe knowing the resources that are available to you. If you've got a fleet of vehicles, there's grants for that. Programs like ours, like businesses might not even know that's available to them, that they could get some coaching on how they can improve. I think a good mix of the three of those is why.
For me, I would say a combination as well, but we've also talked in previous episodes about how overwhelming it can be to make changes all at once, where we think that sustainability and going eco-friendly is an all or nothing thing. It's very black and white, and there's a lot of eco-guilt that people face, and I think that's true for a lot of wedding vendors, especially in conversations that I've been having. So just knowing that it's okay to make cumulative changes. You don't have to change your entire operations overnight. It's really about accessible incremental changes that you can continue to build on year over year.
Totally. I wonder if we can draw that back to you, Jarret, with with BC Green Business and how you kind of do that. Do businesses have to be doing everything right off the bat, or what does that look like for certification?
No, yeah. So with certification, we've got it tiered as silver, gold, or green based on how many actions that you have implemented. And we try to keep, every year when we give a list of suggestions to the business, we try to keep it approachable, but like we'll give them maybe 3 low-hanging fruit, 2 kind of medium-sized challenging ones, and then 1 that's maybe more of a long-term goal to start planning for. We kind of base our program off a continuous improvement model where, every year we'll ratchet it up a little bit, and then even within our own criterias that we assess businesses with, we ratchet the minimum requirements for each certification up every couple of years.
Nice. And I like that too. When we had our assessment, was that, I was a little worried, like, oh, what if we don't meet all the things right away? But having that feedback, be like, okay, these are a few things that you can change if you make XYZ changes.
Yeah.
Take a couple of weeks to make those changes.
Yeah.
I think kind of speaks to that taking baby steps. Like you're doing as many things as you know about, but you don't know about the things you don't know about until you know about them. Having something like that where you can kind of go back and forth and make and implement those changes over time is awesome. So a lot of the BC Green business members aren't, huge, massive companies. They're smaller, mid-sized businesses, I think often with, a pretty local focus in the town that they're in. So what kind of impact do you think that these small or mid-sized businesses can make by making changes in their business? And maybe what kind of impacts have you already seen? Because this program's been around for quite a while now, a number of years. What kind of impacts are you seeing in communities? Yeah, no.
So this was something I even kind of used to think before I worked for this program. But once you get, I think we have about 160, 170 businesses in our program right now. It really, really does add up. We've I think, reduced over 2 million single-use plastics between the members.
Wow.
The members have reduced emissions by this same amount as taken 3,500 cars off the road for a year.
Wow.
I think over 6 million kilograms of waste has been diverted from landfill. And like there's a lot of them are offices that maybe think there's not really much we can do, and I guess it does add up.
Yeah. I think there's that similar feeling in the wedding industry that, it's one wedding. Like it's one day of my life. How much of a difference can I actually make there? I think that the makeup of the wedding industry itself is pretty similar as well. It's a lot of small and mid-sized businesses. And I think from my experience chatting with other vendors, there's a lot of that same thought. I'm a one-person business. My business is home-based, or for people like photographers or maybe officiants, they're not selling a product. They don't have anything tangible. So they think that there's nothing for me to do. It's all someone else. But have you heard from businesses in the wedding industry through the Good Green who feel like maybe there's nothing that they can do to make an impact? And what would you say to them if they were thinking that way?
That's a great question. I think a lot of us as wedding vendors are home businesses, and sometimes it's just the two of you, for example, right? A husband and a wife, or for me as a solopreneur. So what does an impact as my own business due to an entire wedding industry? But when we think about it, an average wedding is 400 to 600 pounds of garbage and then over 60 pounds of carbon for one day. So when you add in all the aspects of different vendors, you can really start to see the tangible impact that it has industry-wide. So if we were to all to do one little thing, it would create a sort of a wave of change.
Totally. Especially on a day where there is so much, or there can be so much single-use so many single-use items used. If we think about switching out all of the single-use cups that might happen at all the weddings in BC in a year, that 2 million? That that there's probably close to that many just cups used in weddings. So there's a lot of change there.
Yeah, I think for businesses to also realize that you have purchasing power is similar to your average consumer. I think we've probably got like upwards of 60 businesses that are all having paper bags supplied by the same company. And we're encouraging them all to email this company and ask for bags that are made with recycled content.
Right.
And maybe 1 or 2 emails can get ignored, but you send 60 emails, it becomes a little harder to ignore at that point.
Totally. And we talked about that a lot in the series for couples as well, is, if they're not finding the things that they're wanting from their vendors, just ask them questions. Because a lot of that, it's up to businesses to make change, but if clients don't want that change, there's not a huge incentive other than your own kind of moral compass to make that change as a business. But if all of your clients are suddenly asking for reusable items, or that you offset the carbon of your travel for your business, then it makes sense to do it, because financially those clients are going to work with you if that's what they're looking for and you don't offer that.
Exactly.
I think I saw a recent stat too where 66% of millennials are willing to invest more in a more sustainable product or service. So clearly the demand is out there. It's really just now businesses taking that step to make change.
Totally. So you both run or are involved in kind of communities or directories or certifications for businesses. BC Green Business, the Good Green. I know you don't have to be a certified member of communities like this to have an impact as a business. But what do you think the benefit is of being a part of a community like that, or being certified for a business? Yeah,
no, totally. One of the best things that I like about this job, honestly, is getting to kind of facilitate matchmaking. We've seen a lot of businesses, they team up through us and then end up swapping either services or ideas, and it just it creates this ecosystem of sustainability, sustainable-minded businesses, anyways. And I think that's one of the big benefits, honestly, is that you gain access to this network of like-minded businesses. It's kind of just about finding people's motivators. Like, some people want the certification for marketing purposes, and that's totally fair. That's fine. Some people simply just want to do a little bit better, and then some people are looking to gain access to maybe something a little larger.
Nice, great use of matchmaking in a wedding theme.
Oh yeah, nice.
All about the puns today.
Top notch. What do you think from the Good Green perspective? What have you seen kind of been building that community, the value is for people who are involved?
I think community is a big thing, knowing that you're connecting with other like-minded professionals that are values and mission and purpose aligned with you. And though we're not a certification per se, I think a lot of our vendors love being able to connect, to mastermind, to brainstorm, to see, okay, I was here 2 years ago, but I've now made these changes. I can help guide you along this journey. So there's a lot of unofficial mentorship and guidance and knowledge sharing and knowledge transfer between directory members, which we love. And even just being able to connect for like a happy hour once a month is awesome, because you can say, oh, these vendors are also going through the same thing. Let's just talk it out.
Totally. There's no need to reinvent the wheel every time. And that's where something like the certification is nice, because you're not starting from scratch, figuring it all out on your own. Same with just like chatting. You can just chat with other people. Generally, my experience has been, if someone is going through these steps, they're pretty passionate about what they're doing. And if passionate people like to talk about the things that they're passionate about, hence this series that we're doing. Yeah, I think having access to other people who are like-minded is, it's huge. So what do you think some of the big kind of takeaways or lessons are that you've learned from working with businesses to help them meet their goals? And maybe I'll ask if there are any particular initiatives or projects that have kind of been a surprise or something that you haven't expected to see.
Yeah, cool. It's one of the biggest takeaways is that businesses are willing to make change. You just kind of got to provide a clear path to do it. Here's the resources. Here's maybe what it's going to take to do it, and they're willing to make change for sure. As far as unique stories, I guess something unique that came up in the last little bit is one of the venues we work with actually provides low carbon menus to for whoever's coming to host an event there. So instead of maybe your beef, pork, chicken options, you're going to have a chicken, fish, veggie.
Nice.
I thought that was pretty unique. Seeing some of the businesses that we work with maybe not realize exactly what they had. We worked with a refillery that started off as just a refillery for the people in the community to come purchase soap that's waste-free, purchase beans that's waste-free and stuff like that. But they soon realized that if they had something to offer the resorts in their area, so they actually started working with the resorts to establish refillery programs for them. So all of a sudden, all of their single-use shampoos, lotions, hand soaps that you see every time you go to a hotel, that's all coming waste-free now.
Awesome.
Amazing.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate those little bottles.
Yeah. It's been it's pretty cool. And they started working with one resort in the area, and then all of a sudden the resort down the road doesn't look great that you have all that plastic waste, and it really just snowballs.
Yeah. I think I like that healthy competition between, it's nice to have just a little bit of pressure from the businesses around you. When you see someone else doing something, you're like, well, I have to do that now. And that's where I think talking about this is so important, because if someone was just doing that and not talking about it, that kind of healthy competition isn't there, and it just stops where it is instead of kind of rippling out and having that effect. So Natasha,
Yes.
how do we take some of these lessons and apply them as wedding vendors? What do you think needs to happen in our wedding community in order for vendors to become more sustainable? Is it certifications, resources, everything, a kick in the head?
This is the $1 million question. Can I divert to Jarret and not answer?
Jarret, how do you think we take these lessons learned and apply them in the wedding community?
And right back to Natasha.
Chelsea, how do you think we can take these lessons learned and apply them in the wedding community? That is a good question. I mean, I think just having wedding vendors know more about certifications that exist outside of the wedding industry. I think sometimes our industry can be a little bit insular. We're all businesses, but not all businesses are part of, say, like a local chamber or a part of that greater business community. And so having access to and information about things like these certifications, a lot of times it's just knowledge and knowing that they exist, and knowing that you can go somewhere to ask people questions.
And I will say there's not necessarily a right or wrong way to do it. Like, you don't necessarily have to go for a full-on certification. You don't have to necessarily join like the Go Green directory or our community here, but there are people out there. So we're really here just as support systems and networks that you can tap into. We want you to be able to use these resources that are available so you don't have to go through this all by yourself. But coming back to that pressure from business, right? And making each other accountable and having transparency around our own business practices is really helpful.
Yeah. A question for you both. We talked a lot in season 1 about just asking questions and that being a really good way to help your business make sustainable changes. If someone just wasn't maybe ready for certification or wasn't ready to join your community, could they just reach out an email to ask a question or to get some information?
Totally. Yeah. No, almost weekly I talk to people and kind of give them a few tips anyways. And we actually make the checklists that we use to assess businesses, they're on our website for free. Any business can go download them. We want people using them as much as possible. And if they want to join the program, then that's great. But if they're reducing their environmental impact, then that's really what it's all about.
Awesome. You too? Can people email you?
I was like, I don't remember what the question was. Yes, absolutely. Please email me. If I don't know the answer, I'm happy to connect you with people that do.
Yeah. So I have one more question before my last question.
Yeah.
And I want to ask, what happens if a business finds out that they are accidentally greenwashing? And I think we talk about greenwashing often as this big evil thing that corporations do very purposefully. But I think often that can come accidentally from businesses who think they're doing the right thing. Like they've switched out single-use plastic cups for compostable cups, but they don't know that those cups can't be composted at any local facilities. It's not purposeful greenwashing, but it is still greenwashing. What do you think businesses can and should do when they end up in situations like that and maybe realize that they're doing something that hasn't been the best? How do you think they go about kind of changing that or dealing with that?
I think kind of referring back to the last question is honestly, you email people and email us and ask, because it gets confusing, especially when we start talking about bioplastics and stuff like that. Like not everyone's going to be a chemical plastic expert, So
it's not a requirement to be in the wedding industry to have a degree in bioplastics.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I think just reaching out, asking other people, asking other businesses what's working, like what they're doing. Reach out to organizations like our organizations, and just genuine inquiry is definitely welcomed.
Yeah.
I will say there's like the different ends of the spectrum that we see in terms of like business response. I think a lot of big corporations then issue this big official press announcement or a press release. Oh, we are so sorry that we did this. These are the things that we're going to do. And from my cynic perspective, I think part of that is performative, right? Because you don't necessarily know that they're going to make changes. Like, what are they actually doing after this announcement comes out? So I'm a big believer in transparency, still acknowledging that happened, but then tangibly, what are you doing? So aside from just this one post or this one conversation that you're having, continue to share that journey of how you're like rectifying those things.
Totally. I think I would, as a consumer, I would trust a business a lot more if they were like, we made this mistake, not because we didn't look into it. As you say, like we spent quite a bit of time looking up bioplastics, and it's a confusing internet world out there. Endless resources, and also no resources on what that whole situation is. But just to be open and honest and be like, hey, look, we learned this thing. And now that we've learned this thing, we're just making a change. Yeah. Rather than it having to be this big, terrible thing. Like we're all learning. And as more information comes out, we're all going to learn things that we thought were one way and are another.
Yeah. And I think along those lines, once you find your answer, share it with people. Because, like you said, it's confusing. So if you find the answer, get it out there.
Because if you're confused, probably other people are confused too. Yeah. Okay, my actual last question to both of you is that if you could give one piece of advice to wedding vendors, businesses who are wanting to be more sustainable, what would that be? Just a small question.
Yeah, no, I guess like right off the bat, like find out what your baseline is. Really do an assessment of, if you're a wedding vendor, like what am I bringing to every wedding? What am I using? What is the waste I'm generating? Maybe pick one item every wedding and trying to find a way to reduce that waste every time, and just really kind of set approachable, attainable goals for yourself, and it'll add up.
Awesome. Same question, Natasha.
I think in the sustainability space, we are all, for the generalization here, but I think a lot of us are we're welcoming, we want to help, we want to be supportive, we want to help bring you into the fold so that the sustainability conversation isn't the abnormal, it becomes the norm, and the folks that are using single-use plastics and all these other things are the outliers. And so my recommendation would be connect with your local vendors, see what they're up to, see what their recommendations are for those easy swaps that you can do, and join communities and networks like BC Green Business.
The Good Green.
Trying to make sure I get the name right.
Amazing. Well, I think if that's a plug for joining up with the BC Green Bean Grist, this is not an ad for either of these organizations. If this it seems like it's not. But thank you so much, both of you, for coming to chat with me today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me. You're going to edit it out to make it sound better, right?